So to mark Palestinian Independence Day on November 15th, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai and the Adnoc Tower in Abu Dhabi lit up in the colours of the Palestinian flag.
Now, the display featured the black, white, green and red stripes of the flag, served as a powerful message of solidarity with the Palestinian people. Now, this gesture as well highlights the UAE's recognition of Palestine's independence aspirations and reflects the country's commitment to fostering unity and peace in the region.
The symbolic gesture underscores the UAE's stance on supporting peaceful solutions to regional challenges. This day marks the Palestinian people's aspirations for statehood and self-governance, which were proclaimed by Yasser Arafat in 1988, and at the time they were recognized by 100 countries.
The UAE has consistently shown its support for the Palestinian people throughout the genocides we're witnessing, now advocating for a two-state solution and the creation of a Palestinian state through diplomatic and humanitarian efforts.
As of now, 44,630 Palestinian lives have been lost since October 7th, 2024. We pray for those who have lost their lives, the families who mourn them, and for a brighter future for Palestine. Move into our next story. It's 8:49 on this Monday morning. And over the weekend, we had an announcement of an engagement. An influencer power couple is coming together. They are both officially off the market. Sherins Beauty and Ossy Marwah, who we've had sitting here, by the way, they are engaged, and fans are calling it the cutest proposal yet.
Well, Ossy popped the question at a breathtaking venue that looked straight out of a European fairy tale. Now, the moment Sherins said yes, her family burst into tears, making it a truly unforgettable celebration.
I feel like I'm losing. I'm like right in front of the cute couple, and no one wants to see. Look how adorable they are. You know what's interesting is I'm not a huge YouTuber, so I did a little deep dive on this story, and I don't think they had shared posts together until the engagement. So this was like a hard launch. The proposal was showing the world, and also it was like the hard launch to her like 9 million followers that they're together. Did people know that they were together?
Look, so they were like YouTube. They were not a couple, but they were like friends, and they would make content together, and their fans shipped them for a very long time. However, fans knew that they were the ones who got engaged before the engagement was announced. It was all over my TikTok For You page. I kid you not. And I would and I don't know who was at the engagement or like the Miktab, that someone leaked their pictures. And it was on TikTok, and apparently I saw a video yesterday where her brother said that Sherins cried when she saw the leaked pictures.
Oh, shame!
Because like, of course, you know, she cried because like, she wasn't the first to share the news, right? However, of course, everyone knew. We all knew.
I didn't know.
I knew. I knew. I asked Sandra. I was like, I even doubted myself. I told Sandra, I'm like, do you really think Osama's getting engaged to Sherins? And she was like, yeah, obviously.
Well, they did, and they did it in style. So they're both kind of in and out of Dubai, so you could call them Dubai-based. She's originally from Sweden, and I'm not sure the country of where it happened, but it was a beautiful proposal. It looks like Como as well.
It was in Lake Como.
It looks like Como.
It was in Italy, yeah.
So she opens the door of this majestic European palace, and she pops out. He's there waiting for her. She runs towards him. He gets down on one knee. The sparklers like go into the air, and then she says yes, and it turned around, and her whole family
was
there cheering.
They lied to her. They told her that she had to go to Italy for a Bulgari ad.
That would get you to Italy.
I mean, yeah, of course. You know what I mean? Like, and she is like,
exactly,
and she is like part of like the beauty sisters, right? And they are known for their hard work, their ethic, and they have a lot of deals with brands and
with Bulgari. I think she's exactly as well, right?
Exactly, you know what I mean? And her sister Nareen lied to her and told her like, hey, we have that, and then she went, and she didn't know at all. However, actually, as well, she had an. She's originally Syrian, and in Syria, before like all of these things happened, she did the Miktab, which is like she's technically married but without a wedding yet.
Right. It's so interesting the timeline and the process of how all these things are done. So they had already done that, and then this was since then. How do you know for sure?
Because they had a video that I watched. It's all over TikTok. It's all over my TikTok For You page. So yeah, I mean, if you want any details, I can tell you guys. It's okay.
Directly from Farah via TikTok. And it's 8:43 on a Monday morning in the middle of November. It means it's time to open up the conversation about men's mental health. We're going to have an expert in here on the show breaking the stigma. We're so excited to have her join. She'll be with us after this very short break. Do stay tuned. Hey guys, welcome back to the Lovin Dubai show. November is Men's Mental Health Month and today's guest is psychologist, adult and family specialist Hiba Salem from Sage Clinics. Today we're going to talk about the mental health challenges men face, why they may hesitate to talk about them, and habits to improve their well-being. Thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me. It's great that we're talking about this.
Thank you for being here again. And my first question is, we know like when we think about men, they are the strongest and they can never have any problems or so whatever. So in your opinion, or in your, of course, expertise, what are the most common challenges that men face with mental health?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head by highlighting the fact that we have certain societal perceptions around what men are expected to be like, right? Men are supposed to be strong, men are supposed to be the providers. There's a lot of, societal perception as to the role that men are supposed to play and the image that men are supposed to have, which means that when men struggle, right, with the same issues that a lot of everyone in society struggles with: depression, anxiety, work stressors, relationship stressors, financial stressors. Those are a massive burden on men. They typically don't know how to seek out the right resources for these same issues, right? And so they tend to go for sometimes either they isolate, they keep it internal, right? Or they tend to go to unhealthy coping strategies such as substance abuse, binge eating. So they typically don't go for the right ways of dealing with these things because of the pressure that's placed on them from society, from culture, to behave in a certain way with regards to these issues.
Is men's mental health still taboo? Like, do you think men are still hesitant to approach a therapist for help, for example?
Right. It's getting better. It's getting better. But there remains the stigma with regards to judgment. What will people think if I go and seek out a therapist, right? What will people think if I express these weaknesses or these concerns? Will I be less of a man? So it's getting better because of raised awareness, because of more normalization of a lot of these things. But mental health in general is still a lot like a taboo subject. And men's mental health specifically is even more of a taboo subject, right? And a lot of men don't know how to seek out and where to seek out a lot of resources. Plus, psychologists tend to be, male psychologists tend to be a minority. It tends to be a female-dominated industry, where as psychiatrists, you'll see a bit more males versus females. So a lot of the time, a lot of men don't necessarily feel more comfortable initially speaking out to men psychologists, and that's still a minority as opposed to female psychologists. So it's also that, do I want to talk to a female about a lot of these things that I'm going through? So again, it's about normalizing, it's about validating, it's about presenting a lot of these resources to raise awareness so men know where to seek out these resources and feel more comfortable sharing them. Yeah.
How can friends and family support a man who is struggling with his mental health? Because men, they don't really come and talk about it, but
absolutely.
People from their circle can notice.
Can notice, absolutely. Well, so first and foremost, it's about noticing, right? It's about noticing that this person is behaving out of character, or is isolating, or is feeling down, or is getting, things that are typically out of character, having more emotional outbursts, right? So part of it is to start with also validating, right? To actually just say, you know what, that sounds really hard. Because a lot of the times, people think that they're supporting when they say, you got this, it's okay, you can get through this. And it's their attempt at supporting, but it's not always validating for the person. It's not always helpful. So starting with acknowledging how hard it can be, starting with acknowledging how difficult it can be, the multiple roles that men tend to play, it's a lot, right? So just acknowledging how difficult it is, just acknowledging the burden that men tend to carry a lot of, right? And then helping them to sort of asking what they need, coming at it with I noticed that you've been having more of a difficult time recently at work. Is there anything we can do to help? Is there anything you need from me, right? Because different people also might seek out different ways and different resources. So for some people, it might be more comfortable to seek out help in a group setting. For some people, they want individualized setting. For some people, they just want to be able to process it with a friend and feel okay talking about it, right? So starting with asking, how can I help? What do you need, right? And that applies to all situations, men, women, children. Ask, what do people need, right? It varies from one person to the other. So start there, right? But if you also have a list of resources that you have, it'll be easier to offer to that man in your life if you know where they can seek out that help from. So it helps to know where they can go.
Interesting. I think the wording is so powerful, and I think just saying, is there anything you need from me, can help so much.
Right.
If someone today is struggling, and maybe they're slowly beginning to identify that, what are maybe some habits that they can, put into their daily lives that could help them overcome the challenges that they're facing?
Right. So good sleep, right? Good dietary habits, those are your basics. Making time for exercise. So physical health and mental health are so interrelated. When we're making time for physical health, it just, fills back into that mental health cup and vice versa. And when we talk about physical health and exercise, it doesn't mean that it needs to be an extensive thing. It could be like a 15-minute walk around the block if that's all you can give to your day, right? So it's assessing what you can do on a day-to-day basis. So good sleep habits, good dietary habits, being physically active, making time, trying to schedule your day so that you're not feeling rushed, so you're not feeling stressed, so that you're making sure you have time for the things that matter, right? If it's important for you to spend time with friends and family, making sure there's time for that, making sure there's time for the things that fill your cup, basically, right? So time management, good time management, connecting with people on a social level, being able to sort of talk about the things that are important for you. But, mindfulness, breathing exercises, meditation, yoga, any of those spiritual things are also extremely helpful. Mindfulness breathing goes a long, long way, right? It's something that you can do if you have a minute of your time throughout the day. So it's also great to do that. And then doing something that actually inspires you and drives you forward is also a great way to sort of feel good on a day-to-day basis. So maybe learning a new language while you're driving on your way to work, listening to a podcast that's valuable for you. So just sort of filling your cup again with things that are valuable for you on a day-to-day basis.
Well, how does traditional expectations, let me say, impact men's mental health? Because like we know, like they are expected to be providers, all the time strong, and
yeah. Absolutely. So definitely it does place a lot of pressure on, especially on like men and women, right? The roles that we're all expected to play in society it's a lot, and the cultural expectations that come with these roles, especially now as, the world is evolving, but some of these roles are still stuck in the traditional, right? So men are definitely carrying a very heavy burden because they have that expectation, that societal expectation to play certain roles. And it comes back to this idea of men are not allowed to be weak, men are not allowed to be vulnerable. They need to be the masculine, the backbone, the protectors, right? But they're also, as you were talking about in your previous story about the rising cost of living, right? It's now harder to just make ends meet, especially in a city like Dubai. It's a very rewarding city, but it's also a lot of running, a lot of, you have to keep up with that rat race. So that does come into play, that societal role, that societal expectation that we place on men to be the provider out of the house, to be the provider inside the house, right? And a lot of the times we're expecting men to play more of a role inside the house. And so it's just about how do men balance these roles, because they're not used to playing these multiple roles outside and inside. So roles are growing, things are evolving, but we also have to be able to keep up with men's mental health and support them in the right way when it comes to this, right? So we have to try to keep up, and taking advantage of November and like months like this to sort of talk about these things is a great way to bring that into the forefront, so that we can sort of realign that cultural expectation and that societal expectation with the reality on the ground, right? It's an evolving reality. Our expectations need to evolve with it.
So interesting in terms of the role, how the change in role in society of men has changed over time, that we probably hadn't really thought about, in terms of they're really expected to be, a provider, one part of a provider for the family, but also to be within the home as much as a helper. Are there signs of mental health stresses for men that we tend to overlook? For example, if men don't want to have the conversation, is there something that you might be able to pinpoint and to kind of focus on? So
not just with men, but in general, changes in sleep habits, that tends to be like a good telltale sign that something's going on, right? So if we see someone sleeping too much or too little, those are good signs that something's going on, right? If it happens occasionally before a big deadline, that's okay. But if it's a repetitive thing, we want to look at that and see that as a sign. Also changes in eating habits, right? If someone is eating to excess or too little, that's also a good telltale sign. Changes in emotional behaviors. If someone's having excessive outbursts, if someone is changes in mood. But again, occasional changes in mood, that's okay. But if we're seeing it on a regular basis, if it's getting worse and worse, if it's a quick drop, right? So if it's a sudden shift and it's an extreme shift, those are good things for us to look out for. And then substance use, right? A lot of the time that tends to be a telltale sign. If we notice people, again, going out of habit, right? Someone who's typically very social tends to be isolating more and more and more. That's a good telltale sign, right? It might not mean anything, but it's worth probing and having that conversation with that person, at least providing some kind of support. They might just be going through a temporary difficult time, but it's good to know that there's someone who's looking out for them. But if we see someone drinking to excess, drinking alone, right, using substances more often than usual, those are also good telltale signs that something might be happening.
Well, what can men do to break the stigma in their own circle about men's mental health?
Right. Speaking up more, right? Talking about it more, sharing more together between themselves, acknowledging the idea that it's okay not to be okay, right? Men, we're trying to also bring a lot of this mental health talk into spaces where men tend to be more present, right? Like gyms, for example. So we're trying to also bring it more to these places to sort of allow these spaces to become more of a space where men are able to talk more between each other about these things that are difficult for them to talk to. So again, raising awareness tends to break some of the stigma. When we're breaking some of the stigma, men are more likely to talk to each other about these things.
Do you think, in your opinion, that it's happening though? I just wonder in a girls' WhatsApp group or a female conversation, like with a close friend, you are able to say, "Hey, I'm actually not doing very well at the moment," but I just wonder, put it out to any man who wants to, anonymously send us a message. Are they comfortable enough to have those conversations? Do you think that they are open to have that? Is the male WhatsApp conversation going into mental health?
I would definitely say significantly less than what we're seeing on women's WhatsApp groups, but it's starting to happen more and more often, right? And again, like last year during this period of time, I know there were a lot of men's walking groups, like walk and talk, right? Where men were using that space to sort of walk, but also talk, right? Again, gyms, paddle courts, we're trying to bring it more into the spaces where men tend to be more present, where there tend to be more of those male bonds, right? We're also doing a lot of corporate talks, right? Let's bring mental health into a work setting and let's talk about it. Even if they're not as comfortable sharing within like the men's WhatsApp groups, at least when we're having some of these open discussions, these support groups, these general support groups, you occasionally get to hear a man say, "This has been a difficult time for me. This hasn't been an easy time for me," right? So having it brought up more, even in the, every once in a while, starts to bring it more to the forefront of the conversation. And I think this is what we need to focus on right now, right? It's not going to be this exponential shift, but it's just about normalizing the space for men to say, "I don't feel okay," right? So even if it's women are talking about it every day and men do it once a month, at least we're having that conversation starting once a month, right? And so the more we talk about it, the more we're seeing it happen. So,
well, I want to bring up social media because we live now in the era of social media now. How can social media negatively or even sometimes maybe positively impact a man's mental health?
Right. So with everything that we're seeing, right, there's a very big push for social media and mental health. We're seeing a lot of influencers, a lot of celebrities talk about their struggles with mental health, right? Talk about strategies that they've used to cope. So mental health is being brought into the forefront. So again, when men are seeing a lot of these, influencer men, these celebrity men, the men they look up to, the men their wives look up to, the men their children look up to, talk about these issues and normalize these issues, it's becoming more and more of a conversation that is being brought to the forefront. It can also influence negatively, again, because social media still tends to be curated, right? We're seeing the pretty, we're seeing the glossy, we're not always seeing the messy, right? So it does tend to sometimes put unrealistic expectations on men to be a certain way, to have a certain body, to have a certain look, to have a certain income, to have a certain lifestyle. It can be quite demanding on men to see this, right? But it can also have that positive influence on men when they are seeing a lot of other influencers and celebrities and people that they look up to talking about these things and normalizing these things and talking about how difficult it is to keep it up, right? And to be okay. It's not easy being okay, right? So
for men and for women, I think it's not easy and it is a process. So are there differences in how men and women experience mental health challenges and how they approach it?
The difference is that because men tend to isolate more about it, men tend to keep it more to themselves, right? So they seek out help when it's a bit further, more advanced than with women, right? Women are more likely to speak up in a WhatsApp group and to say, "I'm not feeling well recently," right? Their friends are going to offer more support. For men, they might tend to keep it to themselves more often. So it tends to take some time for it to be brought out to the surface and for them to seek out help if they do. So it tends to be maybe sometimes more severe than in women, right? Because men tend to keep it to themselves more, we see higher rates of substance abuse with men, and that's also considered, a part of the mental health bubble. We tend to see men process a lot of the mental health in more of a physical way than with women. So women tend to isolate more, tend to be more, to themselves when they're unable to seek out that social support. Men tend to process it more in an angrier way, in a more physical way. So
interesting. Are there any stats on men versus women in terms of percentage of people that need mental health support?
Absolutely. It's about 1 to 5. 1 in 5 men will struggle with depression or anxiety. 3.5 out of 10 men tend to struggle with. Why is it escaping me now?
Depression.
Substance abuse. So it's the stats are quite, significant, right? It's just that they're not being spoken about as much as we would like, but it's getting better
until today.
Well, finally, of course, what advice would you give to a man who's struggling and is overwhelmed mentally and with other things as well, but does not know where to start?
So first and foremost, it's about remembering that it's okay not to be okay, right? Everybody's going through some kind of a struggle. Sometimes the struggles get really big, sometimes they get much smaller. So it's important to be able to take care of the people around him. And I say this to men and to women. You need to take care of yourself first. They always say it on planes. You need to put your own oxygen mask first, and then you take care of others. Then you put other people's oxygen mask on. So take care of yourself first. Seek out the resources that you need, right? Ask a friend, ask a coworker, do a Google search, right? There are resources out there. Whether it's an individual basis or support groups, they exist, right? So take care of yourself. If you want to continue to take care of the people around you who you care for, it has to start with you. So it's just a good reminder for men to take care of themselves first and foremost so that they can be able to take care of the people around them who are depending on them.
That is Hiba from Sage Clinics. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Small conversations like this hopefully will contribute to
absolutely.
People
this is
the
massive.
Help they need.
Yeah.
Interesting. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Farah.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of the Lovin Dubai show. We're back with you every weekday morning at 8:30 a.m. Have a brilliant day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.